Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to talk about how to label the rhythms that we've already learned, quarter notes and quarter rest. We've already counted those, so we already know how to do that. I'm going to show you how you do that on paper because we're going to have some assessments coming up where I'm going to give you a rhythm and you're going to label the counts. It's just kind of like a written or a digital way of showing me that you understand how to count the music. And then we're also going to learn a new rhythm. Last unit we learned quarter notes and quarter rests, and today we're going to talk about eighth notes and how we count those and how they relate to quarter notes. So let's start with this first slide here. We have just two measures. You see our time signature on the left. We're in 4/4. Kind of ignore those vertical green lines for me. That's just a little glitch that happens when I do a screenshot of my music notation software, so I do apologize for that. But there's going to be some vertical green lines every once in a while. Just kind of ignore those. So we're in 4/4 time, which we're familiar with, and we have all quarter notes. So that measure would be counted 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's nothing new. So when we go to write that, we simply label underneath each note which beat it falls on. Okay, so you would write it like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we hit the bar line, we go to the next measure, and we start over again at 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's pretty simple. Then this next slide, we have some quarter rests. Okay, we know that when we count these out loud, we whisper those. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So how do we represent that on the page? If I asked you to write the counts, you need to distinguish between notes that you're going to count out loud and rests that you're going to whisper. Well, you're going to do it like this. Anytime you have a rest, you're going to put that number, that beat number, in parentheses. Anything that is a rest goes in parentheses. So parentheses basically means whisper. Okay? So let's take one more example of this. Okay? So this one you would say 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So to write that on the page, you would write 1, 2, 3, and then 4 would be in parentheses because that's a rest. And then you would write 1, 2, 3 in parentheses, 4. Okay, so that's how we handle the stuff we've already done: quarter notes and quarter rests. Okay, just remember, rest go in parentheses, no big deal. All right. So in this next slide, I have two different kinds of notes. Over there on the left, you see a quarter note. That's the one we've already established. Over on the right, you see what looks like two quarter notes that are kind of holding hands. Okay, that's that line, that horizontal line that connects them. We call that a beam. Okay, now it's very important that you recognize that beam because that beam is what makes this a different kind of note. If I took away that beam, that would be two quarter notes. But the fact that that note has exactly one beam means that these are going to be eighth notes. Eighth notes are twice as fast as quarter notes. Okay? So if quarter notes go like this, eighth notes would go twice as fast. Okay? So I'm going to take a look at the next slide here. And we see 4 quarter notes, and then we see 4 pairs of eighth notes. Now I'm just going to clap it one time so you can hear what it's going to sound like, and then we'll talk about how we count those. So this would sound like this. So you hear that in that second measure, the metronome stays the same. The beat doesn't change, but the speed of the notes doubles. Because again, eighth notes are twice as fast as quarter notes. Okay? How do we label those counts, or how do we even count them out loud? Well, one of those notes is falling on the beat. When I play those eighth notes, or when I clap that rhythm, you hear that every other note is falling on the beat. So the first note of each pair of eighth notes is going to fall on the beat, and we're still going to call that by its beat number. So it's going to be 1 something, 2 something, 3 something, 4 something. That something is going to be te. Te is our word for the second eighth note. Okay, you might hear me refer to that as the upbeat. Okay, it is the space directly in between the beats. Okay, we call that the upbeat. The count is called te. All right, so if I were to count this one out loud, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 te, 2 te, 3 te, 4 te. Now I'm going to count that again. I want you to notice that I'm still saying 1, 2, 3, and 4. Even when I'm counting the eighth notes, I'm still saying those as the metronome beeps. Okay? The first of each of those eighth note pairs is on the beat. Okay? So it still gets a number. The one in the middle gets the te. Listen to it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 te, 2 te, 3 te, 4 te. Okay? So next slide. Same two combinations of notes. We have quarter notes and we have eighth note pairs. They're just in different places. So everywhere we see a pair of eighth notes, we're going to add that te and we're going to say it twice as fast. So this one would go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 te, 2, 3 te, 4. So in the second measure, beats 1 and beat 3 have an upbeat. They have a te. And here's how you would write that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 te, 2, 3 te, 4. Okay? Let's do another one. Okay, again, ignore the green lines. Sorry about that. Okay, so we have a couple pairs of eighth notes in a row in the first measure, and then we have a single pair of eighth notes in the second measure. Okay, so just think to yourself for a second. I'm just going to kind of stop talking now here, and I want you to try to figure out how we're going to count this. Okay, so I'll count this one and you see if you got it right. 1, 2, 3 te, 4 te. 1, 2, 3 te, 4. Okay, is that what you got? Here it is written out. You can see again, everywhere we have those pairs of eighth notes, the first one is always going to be the number, and the second one is always going to be te. Let's count that one together. Ready, go. 1, 2, 3 te, 4 te. 1, 2, 3 te, 4. Now, when we first started talking about eighth notes, I said that beam is very important. The fact that it has a single beam is what makes it an eighth note, because there are notes that have two beams. Okay, we call those 16th notes. If you add a third beam, they're called 32nd notes. If they have no beam, it's a quarter note. So what makes an eighth note is the fact that it has one beam. I want you to take a look at this next slide, and I'm going to tell you ahead of time, it's the exact same rhythm. Now you see the difference there is instead of 3 te, 4 te, instead of that being grouped as two separate pairs of eighth notes, they're grouped in a group of 4. That does not change the rhythm. Okay, that's just a different way to write it. Again, it's the fact that it has one beam, that's what makes it an eighth note. Okay, so the fact that that is grouped in beamed in a group of 4, it still only has one beam, so those are still eighth notes. This rhythm is still counted 1, 2, 3 te, 4 te. 1, 2, 3 te, 4. And on your rhythm sheet for this lesson, or for this unit rather, you're going to see sometimes they're grouped in groups of 2. Sometimes they're grouped in grouped in group of 4. Okay, doesn't change how you count them. Okay, if you see a group of 4, you can just imagine that in your head as 2 groups of 2. It's the exact same thing. Okay, last slide here. We're going to mix it up a little bit. Take a second, see if you can figure out how to count this one. So all I did was I mixed up the eighth notes a little bit, and I threw a rest in there. Take a second, try to count through it. Okay, so here's how this one would sound. 1 te, 2, 3 te, 4. 1, 2, 3 te, 4. Is that what you got? Okay, here it is written out. Let's try counting this one together. 2, ready, count. 1 te, 2, 3 te, 4. 1, 2, 3 te, 4. Okay, so in the quiz that follows this lesson right here, you're going to see some music very similar to what you see on the screen here, and there's going to be some blanks in the counts. Okay, and I'm going to ask you to fill in the blanks, to fill in the missing counts where I have left those out. Okay, so that's going to be your next assignment.